Welcome back to another episode of the FOAC-ILLEA podcast. I'm here at the Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania with Vice President Klint Macro, and we're going to sit down and have a conversation about EDC, something that you all probably know as everyday carry. And Klint, I kind of just want to talk about some things that you've seen. You're a trainer, an educator. Something that people are very passionate about is what's in your pockets, what do you carry every day? And we can talk a little bit about the specifics of what you carry, but I'm really curious just from an overall perspective first. What do you think is one of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're trying to figure out what they're going to carry on their body every day for defensive purposes?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes that folks make is not carrying a defensive tool. The Second Amendment doesn't do a darn thing for you if you don't have a gun on you when you need it. Now, granted, a firearm is not always the best choice for everybody, so, a non-lethal, even a pocket knife, however, I wouldn't say that's always entirely a very good defensive tool unless you have training and know how to use it and know how to use it without cutting yourself. But I think carrying the tool is the most important thing. With that said, when we talk specifically about firearms, I think too often people have the wrong holster. I mean, there's a couple aspects we have to consider. First off, is it going to hold the gun securely? I truly believe that a firearm that is on your body secured in a holster is about the safest kind of staging that you could have for a firearm is on your body and your direct control. So is it going to be securely on your body? But also, can you access it easily? Too often people have rigs where maybe they have too much retention, or it's buried so deeply on their body, or even maybe off body in like a bag or something that makes it really difficult to get into.
So let's back up 1 second. You said too much retention. Define retention for folks watching who maybe aren't familiar with that concept.
Sure. Generally speaking, for an outside the waistband open carry type of thing, or like what police officers use, there's always going to be some type of, or at least there should be, some type of device that locks the gun into the holster. So if someone came up behind you and tried to grab it, it would make it much more difficult for them to do that. And I've seen a lot of times where people will buy a poorly designed holster that has retention and they'll still carry it concealed. So now they'll have to go through all kinds of levels of clothing and then take off a button or a snap or something like that, and that's terribly inefficient. A properly made gun or a holster for a firearm, the design itself should retain the gun well enough with belt tension that it should be secure underneath of the clothing.
Right. So there's the retention of formal nature, that level 1, level 2, level 3, with different kinds of devices for people to defeat in order to draw the gun. But then there's also the retention that you would have from a holster that it's passive, I think is what the industry calls it, but it doesn't just allow the gun to fall out if it's tipped. And so people should look for some level of retention so that, a violent encounter, we see people pushed and shoved and things may go to the ground. You don't want the gun to just go flying out of the holster. So I think that's really the essence of what you're talking about, is that it's got to, at the end of the day, hold that gun in there until you intentionally go to draw that firearm.
Yeah, traditionally like leather holsters and stuff, in essence, are really just kind of a pouch. So basically you'd put the gun into the pouch and there'd be maybe a strap or something that would hold it into the pouch. This day and age, I would be very hesitant to recommend anything other than a Kydex or a plastic polymer type holster, because they can be made specifically for the gun, where you don't have to defeat any type of retention device to get it out, but there's enough positive contact to where it clicks in and it takes a little bit of force to get it out of there.
Okay.
That combined with being over top of clothing or behind a shirt, something like that, makes it much less likely for someone to grab, because if they don't see it, they don't know it's there, they don't know to grab it.
Right.
Which leads me to my next thing that we want to talk about is how concealable the rig is. What can happen sometimes is the rig can print. And what that means is, you can see like things poking out or things sticking out of the shirt, and someone that knows will say, oh, he's got a gun on.
Right.
And as we get older and we get a little more robust,
prosperous, some might say.
Prosperous, yeah. I myself am kind of evolving my kit, because my belly's a little bigger than it once was, and so my older rig now, if I sit in certain directions or in certain positions, you can see that I have a firearm on me if you know what to look for. So everything from the angle by which it goes into your pants, I definitely recommend in the waistline carry if at all possible. I know some people maybe an ankle. I have a doctor friend of mine, a chiropractor. The only way he can carry is on his ankle because he would hit people with the gun if it was on his belt line when he was doing adjustments. But generally I would recommend in the belt line. So the angle by which it goes into your belt line, that's going to be a thing. Sure. That will change the comfort, but also how the grip or the top of the slide might print. But also the angle by which it's in the waistband this way. If it's slightly canted, it may not print as much because of the way the grip kind of interfaces with your belly.
Right.
However, on the other hand, if it's canted too much, then you have to do some really weird contorted angles to be able to retrieve the gun from the holster. So ultimately, especially in an appendix carry, the more perpendicular it is to where we can go straight down and pull straight up is definitely better for efficiency of presentation. However, depending on the size gun, depending on your body shape, it may print more that way. So one of the things that Steve and I were talking about just to evolve my own rig is there's wedges, there are devices you can put at the base of the holster to make it kind of stick out this way, which would bury the grip and bury the slide more into the belly. There's also little wing devices that can help just change the angle of the holster slightly to kind of push the grip into the body shape. So there's a fair bit of fit that has to go into a holster. You have someone where it works perfect for them, make sure you kind of pay attention to what their body shape is like, because it's probably not going to fit you exactly the same way it will on someone else.
Yeah, that's a great point. Holster technology has come so far, I would say even in the last 5 years. I mean, you mentioned wings and wedges and things that can be done to tuck the grip of the handgun so that we can counteract something that the keel principle, the folks over at Filster have come up with. Those types of things that can be done to mitigate that printing that you were talking about is really huge. I want to double back to something you said. You mentioned that people should look for something that is custom made for their gun, that fits and form to their gun. Maybe someone watching has seen a holster advertised that will fit multiple guns, and they like to carry multiple guns. And hey, this holster will fit all of them with some adjustments or tweaks. What would you say to somebody who's looking at a product like that? What might be some of the downsides that aren't going to be seen in the marketing?
Well, there are some universal holsters on the market now that actually work pretty well. I know G-Code makes a universal holster that fits most mid-size striker fire guns, and it actually works pretty securely. But what I found with the universal holsters, they work pretty well if you wear outside the waistband, like under a coat or something like that. They work great in training. Any instructor that teaches concealed carry should have a couple of those universal holsters on hand. In case someone were to show up with like a nylon holster or something that's substandard, they could at least borrow it for the class. But even with the G-Code holster, and there's a few other companies that make some decent universals, I would tend to shy away from that. From a consistency standpoint, I would recommend carrying the same gun as often as possible in the same position on the body anyhow.
Yes.
So, even if you happen to own multiple guns, which, not everyone can afford that, but a lot of people do, like maybe have a Glock 17 at home, for instance. Not to say Glocks are the only gun out there, but maybe a Glock 17 at home, a Glock 19 on your body, and even then you could use the same holster. A 19 will fit in a 17. We had a discussion about this earlier.
Yeah.
So I would say be very consistent with that. I would get a holster that is built specifically for your gun, because that's going to make the retention better and make it easier to present too.
Right.
And the more secure that gun is in the holster, and the more secure it is on your body with a good belt. That's another mistake I often see.
I want to go to belts next. Let's
Okay,
save
cool.
that thought.
Yeah. So the more secure the gun is, and you don't have to worry about it falling out if you're rolling around on the ground with your kids or something like that. You want to worry about it falling out when you get in and out of your vehicle. And so these are things too. Once you do come upon a system you think is going to work, unload the gun and roll around on the floor with your kids and get in and out of your car and do some jumping jacks, whatever your activities are, just to double check that it's going to stay there. And then you can have the confidence that it will. And if you have that confidence, I think you're more likely to put that gun on you every day.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You got to have the gun on you if you're going to use it to defend yourself, or if you need to. So to the belt.
Yeah, so recap holsters really fast. So something made for the specific firearm that you're carrying.
Yeah, there are so many quality companies out there.
There are, and we're not going to provide endorsements or recommendations right now, but yeah, it needs to fit your gun. It needs to be rigid enough. It needs to have proper retention.
Yep.
And it needs to be something that's comfortable with your body type. And that may take a little bit of testing. I know we both have boxes of holsters. We've done that whole cliche. And part of that's the exploratory phase of this too, finding something that works for you. But those 3 attributes for sure it needs to do. I would add one, and that's that it should not allow the trigger to be depressed while the gun is inside the holster.
Absolutely. If you have a holster that doesn't completely encapsulate and protect the trigger guard, then that's a no-go.
Right.
And there are some holster designs out there that are very minimalistic, that may actually secure the gun on the body, but it does expose the holster. So the trigger.
It may even cover the trigger guard with fabric or something,
not
but
completely.
allow
It needs to
a
be
trigger press, which is no good.
Yeah, so that definitely is a good thing you brought up there. Now, before we move on to the belts, though, we did mention retention. You know, obviously an inside the waistband, or maybe not obviously as we're discussing here, inside the waistband, proper holster for the gun, you don't need to have that extra retention device on it. However, if you do choose to open carry, which I would generally recommend against, but you know, it is your right in many states. It is here in Pennsylvania, and there may be a good reason for you to open carry for whatever reason that is. If you do open carry, you have to have retention on it.
Yeah.
You have to.
Agreed.
You know, a strap, a hood, some type of thing that would need to be defeated if someone came up behind you and tried to take the gun.
Yeah.
So, to the belts.
To the belts. So, and really fast before we do that, 43 reasons why open carry is a bad idea. You can check it out on the Firearms and Freedom blog if you're a member. Because again, we just generally don't recommend open carry.
Yeah.
But yeah, belts. What's the most common mistake you see people make when they're choosing a belt to interact with their holster?
2 things. A cheap belt, something that's kind of flexy.
Cheaply made poor materials.
Yeah, cheaply made poor material, but also something with a big buckle. You know, we have to deal so much with trying to keep the gun itself from printing, but if you have a giant buckle, not only does that add to the bulk that could cause printing, but also it takes up so much real estate on the body to where maybe you have a big buckle and then you choose, well, then I won't carry an extra magazine. Well, I highly recommend carrying an extra magazine. And if you don't have the real estate on your belt line, then you're less likely to do that. So, you know, having a smaller belt, something that you can defeat, eat more easily without having to unthread and do a whole bunch of extra work, something that perhaps maybe you can put the buckle on the side of your body if you're carrying appendix. Those are some things to consider. A lot of people will just get like a regular, you know, belt that you might get with a suit, or, you know, something that'll just go on a pair of Levi's. And that's a mistake. You want to get something that's very rigid, built for concealed carry, something that a lot of them have steel reinforcement inside.
Yep. I
will say, you know, for a long time I rocked a really thick leather belt. I used to go to where the Amish were, and I knew a tack shop, a guy that made saddlery and things like that. He made a beautiful belt, and leather worked just fine, but the leather will wear out over time. It starts to bend and curl, and before you know it, your holster's starting to get a little bit floppy.
Yeah.
So this day and age, with what's out there, a really good nylon kind of belt that has some type of steel reinforcement would be recommended.
Yeah. And I would just add too, for those of you who, you know, hey, I have an office job, or I need to have some kind of leather showing because nylon's just not going to fit what I'm doing. That's totally cool. There are good leather options, but you mentioned earlier that steel reinforcement is really big. And I know we're actually 2 booths down from Crossbreed Holsters, and their belts, they actually have 2 pieces of leather that surround a steel insert.
Yeah.
At least that's how they did the technology for a long time.
Yeah,
So you get that
Galco makes
rigidity.
some. I mean, there's
tons
Core
of
makes
places.
some. Yeah, so if you need a dressier belt, maybe something that's thinner, you know, suit belt loops are usually a little bit thinner than like jeans and stuff. There are ones out there to find, but you definitely want to get one that's built for putting a holster on.
For sure. I would say the #1 mistake I see with folks that come to the range and they're trying to set up their gear, it's that they never went and got a gun-specific belt. What I mean by that is there's so many things in the industry you don't have to do that with. You know, we're crazy about the kind of pants we wear and the shirts and the vests, and you don't really need all that stuff to conceal carry necessarily. But what I do see people do is just chintz on the belt. They come in with something from Walmart and say, oh, it's genuine leather, or oh, it's made by this company that makes tough products for construction. Well, there's certain attributes with the belt I find, and we've talked about them here, that people really need in order to hold up the weight of a gun with a fully loaded magazine in it in order to distribute that properly too. I have students that come in with back pain because they're trying to carry in a belt that really wasn't made for it, and all the weight of the gun is actually not being distributed well across their belt line.
Something else too that a lot of people don't realize is a gun belt is designed to have the little clips on it. So if you don't have a gun belt that's designed to do that, it's more likely that those clips might slip off. And quite often in training, I'll have people go for a gun, pull out the gun and the holster.
Yeah.
And I can strip the holster off and use it then at that point in time, but that's an extra step. And then now you can't reholster your gun without, having to find it and pick it up off the ground.
Not ideal.
Definitely not ideal when you got other people on a firing line holding guns. But I would say probably less ideal if you've just had to defend yourself in a public space and that aftermath is beginning. So definitely invest in a good quality belt. And you can find some in a myriad of price ranges, but definitely find one built for that. Check the rigidity of it, not just this way, which obviously there needs to be some play there or you're not going to have any comfort, but it's this way, which maybe you can't quite see that on the screen what I'm doing there. But belt is usually a big mistake that people make by just dismissing it.
I would say it's the number one that I see for people's EDC. I would just note too, the rigidity factor, you have to be careful with this. You can go too rigid. I think when you're carrying the gun outside the waistband, more rigid is better. But when you're inside, especially in appendix, you can be too rigid. There's a balance there. So test that out if you're looking at different companies to make sure that it's going to work in your chosen carry position.
Well, there's one other aspect that I think I did mention, or at least I implied it. If your rig isn't comfortable, how long are you going to carry it? You may carry it a couple days and you're like, So you definitely need to invest the time in kind of experimenting with it. And it really is sometimes an experiment. Very rarely have I seen someone buy this, put it on, perfect.
It all works.
There's always a little bit of tweaking, but I like to equate it to this. None of us would go to the range, put a scope on a rifle, shoot it once and say, good. We're always taking a couple more shots, tweaking a little bit just to dial it in.
Trying different ammunition.
Yeah, dialing it in. So you got to dial in your carry rig. And if it's comfortable, it's secure, you feel confident with it, then you're more likely to carry it every day that you can do so legally.
For sure. What else should people carry every day to be better prepared to defend themselves or their family?
Well, communication device, which most people have, and I would carry that in your support side. Too often in some of the simulations I'll run in class, I'll have them like with a gun and I'll say, okay, now what's your next step? And they say, I got to call 911. And okay, and then they're reaching around or they're trying to do really, actually quite frankly, unsafe things with the gun while they're reaching for a phone. Definitely carry your phone on your support side. That way you can reach it with your support hand. You could use it with your support hand if needed, but in daily life you can take it out and put it in your strong hand if you need to.
Sure.
So that would be something I would definitely recommend. Obviously, most people have a phone, but they generally don't carry it on their support side.
I'd also say too, if you have any kind of self-defense liability coverage, that's something where I've seen folks go out and purchase, a USCCA membership, a CCW safe, Law Shield, whatever your chosen brand is.
My chosen is USCCA.
And mine as well. However, I've seen them go get the membership and leave the phone at home.
Yeah.
And I'll have a conversation with them, hey, you put the gun on, but you don't have any way to call.
Or they don't have their card or haven't saved the number into their phone.
So that's another thing I would definitely recommend. Along with communication, I think there's a place here for the technology. There's a lot of smartwatches and even wireless earbuds. A way to go hands-free like that in an incident where you don't even have to grab the phone, if you can use voice commands to call emergency services or other places, I think that's ideal.
I mean, not to push Apple phones, but Androids have similar features.
Sure.
The name we dare not say, or my phone will turn on. we say that name, and then we could ask it to call the authorities or call the appropriate number. I'm not even going to say it right now because it might actually do it.
Sure.
I've seen people do that in training where they said it, and
Yep.
all of a sudden we got 911 on the phone in a training class. So yeah, if you do use that technology, just make sure you're careful with it. So yeah, being able to communicate hands-free would be something I would try to practice. Know how to just hit that button or say that command to be able to call. And inside the home, if you have family, delegate that duty to somebody, and then have an alternate in some cases, so that maybe you could be guarding the door or your wife could be guarding the door while you call 911.
Sure,
whatever the
however
case may
your
be.
family has set it up.
Yeah, the next thing I'd like to say is I definitely recommend carrying a secondary use of force option.
Okay.
Especially something like pepper spray. Now, there's a whole myriad of different things you could carry. Certainly, I'd mentioned the knife before. Keep in mind, I thought keeping a pocket knife on your body was a good idea because I could maybe use it as a tool of self-defense until I did my first knife fighting class. There's a lot more nuance to it, and actually what I learned in the knife class, I did one with Alessandro Padavani a number of years ago, I realized that the pocket knife I was carrying, I actually probably would have caused more damage to myself if I had to go hands-on with someone because of the design of the knife. My hand would have slipped right forward if I had tried to, poke somebody with it. Slashing it, my hand very likely could have moved into the blade area. So a proper defensive knife is going to have some type of knuckle placement, something to preclude your hand from sliding forward on the blade. With some of the outside the fronts, that button actually acts as a thumb stop to keep your hand from going over the blade. So there is a lot more nuance to that, but I definitely say carry a pocket knife. I'm cutting boxes and stuff all the time. But pepper spray, I think, is a really good secondary option. It's very inexpensive. Frankly, you can pick up a Saber canister at a local Target, so it's very prolific. But I kind of look at it this way. If I have pepper spray on me, which I carry the Asp Defender product, it's just so svelte and small and easy to carry.
And if you want to see a picture, check out Klint's article that is actually out and live on the website. Again, exclusive to FOAC members right now.
Yeah.
But you've got a picture of it in there in your pocket dump.
I have it right here.
Oh,
I'll
here
show
we
it.
go.
It looks like a pen. This is the Asp Defender. And I'm a big fan of Saber products, and they have canisters in different sizes and shape. But I do like the Asp because it just looks like a pen. It's small. It just fits in my pocket. It really isn't invasive in my everyday infrastructure at all. But if you have that secondary option and you're aware of it and you're looking for opportunities to use that instead of the gun, if we are left with no other choice but to use a level of force to defend ourselves, then in theory, maybe I can use that one instead of the gun. And that's a lot easier to deal with on a whole bunch of levels when it comes to dealing with the aftermath and the legal and the financial bit. But hey, if I can avoid shooting someone, I think that's a good option.
For sure.
And the other thing is too, if I have that on me and that's my mindset, looking to use that, and there is no other reason, or there is no other possibility for me to use that, and I have to go to use deadly force, well then I think in theory I could articulate, yes, I was considering using a pepper spray, and the opportunity didn't arise because of X, Y, and Z, therefore my use of the force with the firearm is reasonable.
Right.
I think in theory that could maybe aid me in that argument that my lawyer is going to make for me in the aftermath. If we use any level of force to defend ourselves, you have to expect that there's going to be a legal aftermath and have the infrastructure in place to do that. I carry my firearm every day that I can do so legally. There are some days that I can't because I travel to New Jersey or I'm traveling to New York or Massachusetts. I go up in the Northeast a lot. And in those situations, I can't legally have my gun, but I take my pepper spray with me.
Yeah.
So when that occurs, my secondary becomes my primary.
So do you shift location on your body for
No,
access?
I keep it in the exact same spot.
consistency.
So I would recommend, just like the cell phone, I would keep that secondary tool in your support side and practice to use it. Because, there could be a situation, we run scenarios. In the USCCA curriculum, there's a classroom scenario we talk about a guy that has pepper spray on him and he ends up using the firearm, and then the situation continues, and the second interaction, the pepper spray could have sufficed. If you can't grab it with your support hand, and you got a gun in your hand, then that causes a great deal of complexity. So using your support hand, I can still hold a firearm and use pepper spray if necessary. So, and again, if I don't have the gun in my hand, I can take it out and put it in my other hand if necessary too. But I would definitely recommend secondary tools. Learn how to use them with your weak hand or your support hand.
Right. Yeah, I'm a huge advocate of pepper spray. I think, especially for folks who maybe aren't quite over to carrying the gun yet, boy, it's a great intermediary force option. It with minimal training, it can be used effectively, and I think it's a great option for a lot of people.
Yeah, and some people can't carry. My son's not old enough, but he has pepper spray with him. I have a dear friend who is a great American, a great father, and a pillar in his community, but he did some dumb stuff when he was a kid, and he's got a record. So he's prohibited. He can't buy a firearm, but he carries those other tools, and having a tool is better than not having a tool.
All right. So, well, Clint, let's lighten things up a little bit.
Lighten things.
Oh,
that's fun.
There you go. Flashlight.
Absolutely.
Some people look at me and go, hey, that's overkill. Why on earth would I carry a flashlight around in my pocket every day? What I tell them, and I'm curious what you think, I tell them you will be shocked at how much you use this thing for everyday administrative tasks.
Kind of like the pocket knife. When I say the pocket knife, that could be your defensive tool. Although some real pure knife guys have their box cutter knife, that they use to open their mail with, and then they have their defensive tool, and never the twain shall meet.
Sure.
But just like that as a utilitarian tool, the flashlight is something I use all the time. And if you go outside, like, hey, you want to see? Well, I have the means to do that. Yeah. If you don't know what that shape is in your hallway, I have the means to figure out what that is. Now, to use it tactically and combined with a firearm, there definitely is. Good to see you. There definitely is a need to practice with it and take some training, and there definitely are some classes that can be taken for low light.
Sure.
But just to be able to see is like a good thing. Yeah. Absolutely recommend the flashlight. Now you're carrying that Streamlight, right? Is that a Streamlight? That's a Phoenix.
Yeah, Phoenix.
So yours is a little bit bigger, but I will say you're a little bit more svelte than I am, and you could probably poke that in a pocket and not stick out so much.
Yeah.
I've been rocking this Pelican for a long time. Actually, this particular one I haven't, because I lose them in airplanes. I don't know what it is and I travel a lot by plane. So when I sit in the airplane seat, I must lose them in the airplane. So one thing I like about this Pelican is it's a very inexpensive one. You can replace it for like $30 on Amazon. And flashlights can be very expensive. And I think this is the best $30 flashlight that I have found. And the clip is a little bit higher, so therefore it doesn't stick out as much and not catch on seat belts and steering wheels when you're getting out of the car.
Sits a little lower in your pocket.
Sits a little lower in the pocket.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I'm aware of that one. That's a good one. You've been carrying a long time, obviously.
Very long time, yeah. Like I'm wearing the finish off of it, and not to just plug any one specific brand, but I've had good success with Phoenix. I've also had good success with Streamlight, which is a Pennsylvania company.
And
so really, again, you don't have to carry something that's quite this big. But something on your body to illuminate.
Yeah.
But I love, coming out into a parking garage after a doctor's appointment or a movie.
Check.
I can light up around my vehicle, especially the signal that sends to anybody who I may not have seen in my environment that's trying to harm me. Hey, they're paying attention. They're hitting things with a flashlight. I've read stories where that alone was likely the cause of a de-escalation of what could have been an incident.
Oh, sure. Hey, the bottom line is the average garden variety criminal, if there is such a thing, is much less likely to attack somebody that's paying attention than someone who is paying attention. Again, I always avoid absolutes. People get attacked in broad daylight. I mean, we can find an anecdote somewhere that defeats that statement. But it doesn't, because I say generally speaking. So if we can stack the deck in our favor, that's like one of the things I'm talking about in my seminar today. Little things that we do to stack the deck in our favor add up a lot. And just by looking around, and that not only allows you to take in and collect and process more information, but other people are watching you collect and take and process information. Therefore, they're less likely to attack you. The common everyday garden variety criminal, if there is such a thing, is much less likely to attack someone that's going to be a problem for them.
Sure. And you can't observe your environment well if you can't see. So this gives you the tool to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I tell you what, there's other training that you can get, like Kubotan training. You could use this to strike, you could use this to hit pressure points. So there is a lot more that could be done with this if you have the training.
Sure.
But even if it's just, let me shine some light on something, it's an invaluable tool to have on you every day.
Awesome. No, totally agree. So, EDC, what else didn't we cover that you say, hey, before we go, we've got to tell the folks this?
Well, you'd mentioned the self-defense liability insurance. I mean, that's a huge one. As I mentioned, I'm a big fan of the USCCA, been a member since 2013. There are other organizations and companies out there, so whatever you do, you got to have a lawyer on speed dial and have the money to be able to pay them. You just have to expect, if you use any level of force to defend yourself, you're going to have to deal with the legal system. And frankly, the legal system, I like to equate it like this. I say this in my seminar. It's like being chained in the front car of a roller coaster. Ain't nothing you can do but ride. You gotta have a good lawyer and money to pay them. So services like the USCCA can kind of take care of that, and then I have the peace of mind to know that someone has my back. But there are places that are constitutional carry, and we fight for constitutional carry. We got it passed here in Pennsylvania, but Wolf vetoed it, and there's been a few things subsequently we've been trying to move it forward. But even with constitutional carry, I do recommend, if there is a licensing process in your state, to get that license.
Yes.
That really helps with reciprocity, but also, while we still do have licensing processes in states, I think that also helps with a reasonableness argument if ever you did have to use force to defend yourself.
Sure.
If I'm the lawyer, well, my client, he went out and took the class or submitted the paperwork to get the license, even though he didn't need to, because he wanted to be an honest, all-American, blah, 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 blah. Stacking the deck in our favor. But too oftentimes, people who own guns and maybe don't even carry, especially here in Pennsylvania, they won't get a license. And in Pennsylvania specifically, our transportation laws are really, really, really tricky and sticky. So if you're a gun owner in Pennsylvania, even if you don't intend on carrying, go out and get your license to carry a firearm.
Yeah, just from transporting it in your vehicle, we cover this in our concealed carry seminars, which you can find on the events tab of our website to find out when we're coming near you. But we go into this in depth, how you lose so much complexity by simply obtaining a Pennsylvania license to carry.
Now, the last thing I'll say on that, and this could be a nuanced 10-hour conversation too. There are a lot of companies on social media that make claims that there's kind of like a one-size-fits-all permit across the country, and that is not true at all. There are a couple permits that may work in a great deal many states, but you have to do research. Some states, they will not accept anybody else's carry permit. So if you go through Maryland, you have to have a Maryland wear and carry permit, otherwise you're breaking the law. And I believe laws like that are really draconian. They put extra effort onto the law-abiding citizen. They victimize law-abiding people.
Unconstitutional.
But the bottom line is, if that law is in place, I do not recommend you break any laws.
You're putting yourself in legal jeopardy.
Absolutely.
If you do.
And if you did, you could lose your gun rights, and then you can't protect yourself and your family with a firearm, or frankly, depending on the law, is any type of tool that could be deemed, quote, offensive. So definitely do your research. I think one of the greatest resources we have available is the USCCA's reciprocity map. It's very in-depth, and it also gives information on non-lethal tools. Can you carry your pepper spray in this state? Can you carry a taser in that state? Tasers are kind of tricky. You can own them in every state, but you can't necessarily carry them out in public or concealed in some states. So, some permits are for a firearm specifically. Some are just a license to carry they say a weapon. And depending on what a weapon is, that could mean your pocket knife. Yeah. Your pocket knife deep in your pocket, you get pulled over, they find out you have it on you, it's, quote, concealed at that point. Maybe you needed to have a license to carry for that. And as silly as that is, and that victimizes the law-abiding citizen, again, we don't want you getting jacked up, breaking a law you didn't know about. So you gotta, whatever state you're in, whatever state you're going through to get to the state you're getting to, you got to know what the laws are. So that USCCA reciprocity map is a really good resource.
That's great advice. I guess my last thing to add would be that you're going to have to kind of play with what works for you and what works to carry on your body versus opposed to off your body. Maybe some things are going to be in a backpack or in your vehicle in a glove box, if you can't find the way to carry it. But play with it and stretch yourself, because there's value in having these tools with you, we all kind of consider them important enough to own, but a lot of people just don't get to the point where they are physically comfortable or mentally comfortable, intellectually comfortable with having them on their body. And so give yourself the grace and the trial period with the gear in order to get comfortable. And I would say too, we're really looking forward to releasing a lot of the FOAC board, and our volunteers are going to be submitting their EDCs. I can't wait to read these. I love seeing what other people are carrying, what they have trusted and tested, and I'm really looking forward to those columns as they come out. So watch out for those on the website and in the newsletter.
Yeah, so we're limited on time, but we didn't even talk about like medical equipment, extra magazines. I mean, there's so much more that we could discuss, but ultimately, I want you to have the gun or whatever defensive tool you're using as a primary. I want you to have it on your body. Some people, maybe that's not possible, and I mentioned, the chiropractor putting it on his ankle, but he still has it on his body. That's a lot harder to get to, but at least he has it on his body. Folks say, well, I have my gun in the glove box. That's not going to do you no good if you get attacked and you have to now deal with an attacker and go back to your glove box. Frankly, if you could get to your glove box, I'd recommend you jump in the car and drive away. So having it on your body is important. And of course, what we do for a living, training is a huge thing. If you train, not only will you learn to use it more efficiently, but I think, and I'll say this, some people might give me the stink eye on it, more importantly than that, if you train, you'll have confidence in putting it on your body. That's important. Have the confidence to be able to carry it every day. And the more training you get, the more efficient you'll get with using it once it's on your body. But go out and take some classes.
Seek out good training. Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining another episode of the FOAC-ILLEA podcast. We're, again, excited. We're doing a lot of recording down here to release these as kind of evergreen content throughout the year. And we've got some other cool conversations lined up and people that we're excited for you to meet. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to visit 2apa.org for all things Second Amendment related in the state of Pennsylvania. And we thank you for watching.